So this dream is going to be packed with information. It's got a few different themes going on. There's some extra bits I've never heard of that I looked into as far as Christian holidays and things like that this kind of relates to. So a lot of the scripture I'm just going to cite rather than reading out. I think there'll be a couple of scriptures I will read out, but mainly I'll cite them because otherwise we'll be here all day. Okay, so I'm going to try and trim it down, but as I said, this is a very, very full dream. And as far as obviously the timeline on this as well, it goes a bit back to front, but it's just how I recalled it, and it works well enough actually reading it that way. So I'm literally just going to read this pretty much straight off of the pages, and see how we get on. Yeah, see how we get on. Okay, so this dream is, well, as I said, it's going to read back to front, but this bit. So this is a house party. So at this house party, we're eating, we're drinking in this very large dining room. That was, really, really big dining room. It was easily big enough to hold 6 to 8 dining room tables. So very, very, very big, really, almost like a hall. We were mainly drinking alcohol, and there was many friends there in this dream, as in real dreams, but there were other characters who I didn't know, just to fill the scene, really. But a lot of friends that I do actually know. For me, I was getting really drunk, swaying about a bit. So this is very much what I used to be like. I used to get drunk pretty much for a period of time, twice, maybe 3 times a week. That's when I was younger, but it did continue for quite some time. Not to that degree, by the way. That did calm down quite a bit, and it might not be even once a week, but yeah, it was quite frequent. So I remember sort of swaying around a bit, and I'm trying to keep myself under control, really struggling, try and keep myself upright and things like that. I remember at one point I was pretty much drinking alone, as I stood up quickly. I was proposing that we all had some shots, all just down a load of shots. But my friends had moved on, so they'd moved on to another room. I hadn't even noticed, I just kept on drinking, and they'd moved on to the next room. This other connected room was more like the size of a typical lounge. So typical lounge, what is that? For, let's say, 5 meters by 10 meters, something like that. Just as a rough guide. Something like that. But this other room was much, much bigger. So I've got no idea whose house this was. Must have been a very, very big house for that original room that I was into, and then to move into this room, which was seen as a small room in comparison. So where were we? So I stood up quickly and then proposed all these drinks. Then we moved on to this other room. This other room was connected, but was more like the size of a typical lounge. And there was a female DJ playing. I've got here really heavy dance music, really, really heavy. So I'm assuming really punchy, heavy beats, and that's fast. I think it was that kind of stuff. It was, I would have said, the sort of music that is very niche. Not really many people would like that. I mean, I've gone through all sorts of phases of music, house music, hard house music, which is very much like that. Trance, and I don't know. I didn't describe what it was, but it was just very, very heavy, and it was a kind of dance music that's equivalent of. Okay, all right. So its style was very similar, like to a dance music equivalent of heavy metal. So lot of shouty, sort of very, very noisy, intense music. And I personally thought it was a bit much. Really, I thought it was a bit heavy going for the vast majority of people. And you've got to be, again, I've mentioned this before, I used to be a DJ, and you've got to be very aware that you don't want to kind of, what's the word? Don't want to say isolate, but you don't want to kind of push away a load of people because of you you like this particular music style and nobody else does, like no one else does. That's what it kind of felt like, was this person was playing music that really they liked and nobody else really liked it. And again, I've been guilty of that myself. You know, when you're a DJ, you think you've got the best music taste and everybody else is wrong, you know, that kind of thing. So I thought it was a bit of a party killer, really. Just because it was just too intense. Not many people actually were staying in this room, and saw that she had, saw that she had loads of disregarded vinyl sleeves. You know, so what you put the record into, she had loads of them just discarded all around her. But they all look really, really similar. So it's almost like, and this again makes me think of one of my DJ days. She'd obviously found this music style that she really, really liked, but it was so niche that there was almost like one artist that did this particular style. So the reason all these vinyl sleeves look the same, it was almost like she was playing, you know, mixing one track into another track of the same album. And because all the album, like most of the album sleeves looked the same, or the record sleeve looked the same. And again, I've been guilty of that myself, where I went into some sort of, it was like some sort of Italian dance music I went into for a time, and it was all the sleeves looked the same because it's all from the same record label, because there wasn't really anybody else who was kind of championing that music style, and I was just really into that. And I remember actually doing a house party once, and I was playing that kind of music. No one was in the room. It was like literally me and my mate, you know, and no one else was in there. So it kind of looks a little bit like me in a way. But again, that was a very short phase. Yeah. So very similar artwork on it, on these record sleeves. I made the connection that maybe that she was maybe paying singles from the same album. In that she'd found an artist that she really, really liked, and she was just playing them exclusively. That's what it kind of felt like. As I said, hardly anyone was into it at all. From what had been quite a lot of people in this big, large gathering in the previous room, and they'd filtered into this room, she wasn't holding on to any of this crowd at all. There's only roughly three of us that decided to move on from that room to another room. So we were off to some sort of hallway, which then serviced some other rooms. And as we went into this room, which was again quite a bit bigger, I looked immediately to my left and I saw some beds with mattresses on the floor. So in that it was just a mattress on the floor, that was the bed. Yeah, so it wasn't like a proper frame or anything like that. Mattress on the floor, and I put sub-teen kids. So yeah, so quite youngish teen kids. They weren't super young, maybe about 10 years old, something like that. So a little bit between 10 to 12, something like that. And one of the three guys that I was with, I remember one of them being Christopher. I know in the dream it was 100% him, and he came in. Yeah, I can't quite place, by the way, why specifically him. I have got some thoughts as to maybe a why, but I'm certainly not going to say why on this video. But I've got a feeling it's to do with things I go into in a second. Yeah. So one of the guys was this person who made an incredibly drunken and incredibly inappropriate comment when he came into the room and saw the kids in the bed. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, don't worry, I've not come to sleep with you guys." Like, why would you even say that? You know, it's just embarrassing. It was an embarrassing thing to say. He walked into this room and said, looked to the left, and he's all these young, like, let's say, boys and girls. "Don't worry, I've not come here to sleep with you." Like, well, that hadn't even entered anyone's mind, but thanks for clarifying. Do you know what I mean? It was a really weird thing to say. Yeah, and he was thinking he was funny. You know, oh, hilarious. Yeah, well done. You know, it was really embarrassing to be around him when he said it. You know, and I was pretty disgusted, to be honest. I thought it was like so inappropriate. Why would you ever say that? And I was, as I said, in the dream, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to be associated with him. Okay, so as we stumbled into this room, because I was drunk as well. So I mean, when it comes to your moral behavior and all that, you know, all that kind of stuff, obviously it falls by the wayside, doesn't it? When you're really, really drunk, you're not really, quite with it, as to what you're saying. So I've said plenty of stuff, believe me, so inappropriate. Not to this degree, I don't think, given the kids' ages, but I've certainly said a lot of inappropriate stuff. As we stumbled into the room further, on the right-hand side of where I've walked in, was a couple of sofas, and I think against the wall, and in front of us was then a TV. So if you walk in and back to now, you've got the door. To the left, you've got a few mattresses and a few young kids trying to get some sleep. You've got a TV in front of you, slightly off to the right, and then behind that, against the wall of this room, you've got some sofas and you've got some people sitting down watching TV. So, and it was the parents of whoever's house this was. So it was definitely a house party. So that was now very clear. But I mean, it looked like a house party anyway. It was just the sheer scale of it. You just didn't. It didn't feel like it could be a house. It was so massive, but clearly it was. But they were just watching TV, so they were just kind of keeping out of the way of this part of the house, so that so basically the parents of these younger. So obviously what they've done there is they've this house party is for an older teen, let's say my age group in this dream, and they're keeping themselves away so that their kids can kind of have a house party without mum and dad sort of what's the word, preventing them from doing stuff, that kind of thing. I think I've been to it's pretty unusual, but I used to go to stacks and stacks of house parties. Like genuinely, we would have house parties between a few of us every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks, and it would be parents going out, or parents were all just cool with it, and we'd use the house, everybody would be involved. Sometimes the parents would be involved as well. Sometimes you might go to one and maybe the parents have literally done this. They've gone in and they're not sleeping, but they're upstairs keeping themselves away. So this sort of thing did happen. Not that we ever sort of stumbled into a room where they were trying to sleep, or they were that never happened, but anyway, so these guys were all just watching TV, and I then felt really, really awkward, really, really awkward. So as I said, the older teens were obviously our friends, I guess, in this. There was also some slightly older kids in the room with their parents, roughly about sort of 14, 15. And they were all, as I said, all watching TV. It felt very awkward, us being there. I wanted immediately to leave. I felt like I needed to get out. And I think this is where I actually woke up. So I said, I'm going to take you sort of backwards. So that's how it kind of ended. So prior to all of this house party sort of aspect going on, we were there was a bit where there was like a lead up to it. So the lead up to it was where there was we were outside, and this is, so if you imagine the house party we've just done, that's all nighttime, okay, and now we're going backwards. So this is where we're outside, and I remember it's kind of more dusk, so it's starting to get dark, but it's not fully dark yet. The sun's still coming down, and while this is all going on, we're just at that slightly reduced light level, okay, is what I would describe. It looks a little bit like dusk. And I was with quite a few friends actually. So this is all prior to the house party. I remember one of my wife's friends, so not really friend anymore, but when the kids were really, really young and the parents are chatting around, as they're dropping the kids off, you'd get to be friends, wouldn't you, with local people. We're not friends really with any of those anymore. Now our kids have gone to high school and stuff. We're not really friends with any of those anymore. But this particular friend was called Tiffany. Now, if it was avoidable, I would have avoided the name, to be honest, to identify who the person was. But this does make sense, which just randomly came to me. So I just had this real urge yesterday, as I'm thinking about which dream to film next. I had this real urge to look into what the name Tiffany means. No real reason. It's just because of her as an actual person. She could have represented all of what happens anyway, and it could have just been that. But something else. It makes a lot more sense as we go. I just realised I didn't tell you when this was. This was the 5th of January 2026. So we're now in late February 2026. So let's say about 6 weeks ago, something like that. This one was. Doesn't feel like it, but yeah. Okay, yeah. So there's this friend then, or more of an ex-friend, let's say now, called Tiffany, and she was part of our group. And yeah. So if you imagine, it's just quite a few friends all just sort of gathering around, having a drink together, standing up. We're in this outside environment, and I go on to describe it a bit more, but just to jump into this bit. So she just suddenly just grabs hold of this guy who just happens to be walking by. So at this point, I would have said, in this dream, we are in our 20s, let's say. Oh, sorry, I've written that down. Yeah, in our 20s. But this guy that she grabs onto is easily in his 50s. I would have said he was probably in his early 50s, something like that. Balding, so he's losing his hair a little bit, and a bit overweight, and yeah. So she basically just grabs hold of this guy, like hands on the side of someone's face, where you're kind of passionately kissing somebody with your hands on their head. It was like that. So she just randomly just grabs this guy and then just starts kissing him really, really passionately. She didn't know the guy at all. She just grabbed hold of him, and you could see that this guy was just visibly shocked as to what's just happened. Her just suddenly grabbing him like that, and it just came from nowhere, and it felt like it was just a result of her being drunk. And again, you do stupid things when you're drunk, don't you? All of your inhibitions just fall away, and that's why realistically, I think a lot of people, when they go out, they do get drunk, is just to be a bit more relaxed, be a bit more confident. And I found to connect with your mates on a deeper level. I tended to always find that when you're a bit more drunk and you're all on the same level, because it's quite a good leveler, I think, alcohol. Then you found that you sort of connected a bit better as friends, I suppose, is what I'm kind of saying. But anyway, so she's grabbed hold of this guy, and as I said, she's kissing him passionately. He's incredibly shocked as a result of what she's done. He was obviously very out of place, actually, because we're all in our early 20s, let's say, and he's going by in his 50s. He just gets grabbed. He's more like a kind of like a dad, or even like a granddad character, in the dream. It was really, really strange as to how that all kind of came about. And the mates that were with her, which was me and some other people. I can't remember who was there, but they were all kind of like really ripping into her, just saying, like, what have you just done? What was that all about? And this was her female mates, are all saying, oh, what have you done that for? And they're just sort of laughing and pointing at her, pointing at this guy, effectively mocking him as well by saying, what are you doing? Just getting hold of this completely random old guy. And so probably this guy's thinking, oh, cheers, Of course, while shocked, this older guy also felt really, obviously really embarrassed. I got the impression that he may have even been married, to be honest, but she didn't care. She just grabbed hold of him. She wanted to get what she wanted to get out of this interaction. But yeah, she just grabbed him and kissed him without asking permission. The guy was visually shocked by her advance. After this, anyway, this guy just moved on. It's not like he was really interested. Her friends were just sort of laughing at her and saying how it was like, you've got to stop doing this. It was like, this was a regular thing. Oh, she gets drunk and she just grabs hold of older guys. It was just like, seemed to be, not that this is reality. Again, this is just what it was in this dream. And that it was like, stop doing this. Stop just grabbing these old guys, It was clearly not the first time it happened. So, and it also confirmed the fact that it wasn't a dare. Again, I've seen all that sort of stuff, which is just, again, you feel awful, don't you? Where, I don't know, there's some sort of really geeky looking guy and this really lovely girl who goes over and kisses him, and he thinks, oh, wow, look at this amazing girl who likes me. You're like, no, she's done it as a dare, and then you feel really bad for the guy because he'd kind of felt like somebody liked him, but they didn't. That's kind of how it sort of felt. But obviously in this scenario, slightly different. But I know some of her yeah. Yeah. So I noticed some of her, all of her, or quite a few of her girlfriends that say are wearing like, well, vesty tops, so the top of their chest, let's say, is visible. Okay. And it felt like a sort of summer environment because we're out and we're not wearing coats or anything like that. We're all wearing, t-shirts and stuff like that, and it's not cold. So yeah, it felt like a summery sort of thing. But what I noticed about all of these girlfriends was that they all had a zodiac signs on their chests or whatever. Yeah, specifically on their chests, and it was like it was zodiac signs, obviously, but it wasn't just like a picture of a crab or a picture of scales. It was more the star sign. So you would see dot 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 dot, and then the picture of what that star sign is. But it showed the stars that made up that star sign. Okay. Yeah. There you go. There were star patterns of that zodiac sign and it presented in different ways. But one I remember. Okay, this is the tattoo I'm describing, sorry. So it's kind of like it was semicircular, I suppose. So it showed like a semicircle sort of thing, and then it had 3 or 4 different zodiac signs that say on her chest, in this kind of half circle. I remember, and I remember another one was a combination of piercings and tattoos. So it was like, you had the actual picture that was the tattoo, but then this other one I noticed used like a stud sort of piercing for the actual stars themselves. So there were let's say there was three or four stars that made up that star symbol. Then there would be like all these different piercings that were where the stars would be in this zodiac. And I put like they were like the little pins that you put in a cork board. So in reality, I can't see how. Well, you couldn't put like the butterfly clip behind it, like a piercing, like you would put through your ear, because obviously it's stuck directly in your chest. So I have no idea as to how these would actually. And again, if you had one like in your cheek or something, obviously the fastening is inside your mouth, isn't it? You put in that clip in to hold it in place. But these are in the chest, so I was kind of baffled as to, well, how does that even work? And as I said, I was thinking of it a little bit like the little round sort of spherical pins that you put in a cork board. They were very much like that I was seeing all in this. I remember it was on one person for sure, that I saw this one. But again, it was multiple friends, so it's almost like, again, it makes me think of when I was younger and people were talking about. Well, I've talked about my piercings, so I had a tongue piercing, and we made a pact. It's one of my dreams, which is it called The Oath? It's in the Call to Faith series. So I talk about my tongue piercing and all that sort of stuff in there. But I remember us at one point as a group of friends, we were all talking about getting tattoos together. And I think it was like dragon tattoos or something. It never happened, but it was one of those where we were all going to do it. We're all going to do different designs, but we're all going to do it just as a way to kind of get, I don't know, be better, like good friends, a way of sharing tattoos and stuff, that sort of thing. Anyway, so but anyway, they were used to map out the stars in that star sign, and then a tattoo that kind of connected. So these were the piercings, these little piercings, and then the tattoo would kind of connect them into the shape, let's say, of the actual zodiac, and to draw that star sign on. I actually queried it in the dream because I hadn't seen it before. I don't recall ever seeing people have piercings used in that way. As I said, I don't know how they would connect, but don't recall obviously what the response was. I was saying something like, what's the deal with all of your mates with all these tattoos? Like, what's the story there? I don't understand. Why have you guys got all these different tattoos? They're all astrology chart kind of zodiac signs and stuff. They weren't friends of mine actually, so they were just part of the group. They were people that we knew, but they were kind of friends of some of the people there. So again, I don't remember who they were. There was roughly 7 or 8 people. They were mainly all girls, and we were all hanging outside this kind of like burger bar. So as I mentioned, we're standing up, we're drinking, standing beside this burger bar. We weren't eating or anything, but it was just where we decided to congregate, I guess. And we've got all people sort of moving around, walking past us. And this is when this 50 plus guy has walked past, and Tiffany, the character in this one, has just grabbed this guy. It also had a very music festival vibe. So I do mention this a bit further down, but it was all grass that we were standing on. So like a big open field that's being used for a temporary music festival. And that's what we were at. And then we move on to this house party. What have we got? So yeah, we're all enjoying drinks together. Yeah, people wandering around, eating, drinking, enjoying themselves. Yeah, I said it had a kind of a bit of a smallish music festival vibe to it. And I think as the sun was coming down, we then moved on to this house party. So I remember us being out on grass and outside, all sort of thrown together. Not a regular event that we would go to on a regular basis. This was just like a one-off kind of festival sort of thing. Then we go back again. Okay, so going back again. Where is it? Back again. Yeah, so prior to this part, I'd gone round to a friend called Daniel. So I'd gone round to Dan's house, and from this is going back to when we used to live quite close together, actually, because of we were childhood friends. So again, I can't remember what sort of age. I sort of said like 8 to 10. I don't really know, actually. Might have been younger than that, really. But yeah, he was, like back then, when you were a kid, you just have other children, wouldn't you, on your street, and you just become friends with them. I had stacks of friends that were local to me, absolutely stacks of them, because we were always out all the time. So you bump into people and make friends with them, So again, I was at Dan's house, which is just a little bit down the road from where I lived, at my parents' house. And this is all before this party going on. And I went round to his house on this four-wheeled scooter. So a bit like those, very much actually like those electric scooters now that again, I don't know if this is a UK thing anyway, where I don't know how many years it's been going on for. Not that many, maybe like 3 years, 4 years. I don't know. I don't really know. But scooters where you can just hire a scooter, you put in your car details or whatever, and then just start using this scooter that's just been left at the roadside. We've got them all over. So you're wandering along, and then randomly on the pavement, sidewalk outside someone's house is just this one that's been left there. Somebody's obviously used it, left it outside their house. Some people sort of hide them because they want to use them for commuting and stuff all the time rather than buying one. But yeah, you see them dotted around all over the place, in random places. Anyway, so it was very much like one of those. So I'd use this four-wheel scooter, this electric one, to get from my house, which was only about a 5-minute, no, not even like 3-minute walk, 5-minute walk from my house, 3-minute walk, let's say, pretty close to where he lived. But I've got on this scooter, and I've zoomed off to his house. Oh, okay, yeah. I'll mention it's just because it's funny. I'll mention how me and Dan met. So as I said, young kids. He actually, I didn't remember how we met for the first time actually, but I remember him telling me once. He said that we met because he happened to be riding by on his bike or something, and he saw me standing out on our little front lawn, which is really small. It was about the size of 2 cars side by side. It was our little patch of grass that we had, and I was standing there just practicing doing roundhouse, reverse roundhouse kicks, because I was really into the Karate Kid, I think it was at that time. And he said I was like the kid who he went past and just would always see practicing roundhouse kicks. Just makes me giggle. How funny. And that's how, and he just decided one day just to come up and say, all right, I'm Dan, that kind of thing. And then we were friends ever since. Yeah, really funny. Funny way that we ended up sort of meeting. Anyway, so I've got to his house on my little scooter thing. I've kind of parked it up just outside his house, and then I've noticed the outside of the front of his house is actually where is it? A disregarded pedal bike, so a standard sort of bike that a kid would have, and obviously an adult as well. But it was just discarded in the middle of the road, just in front and to the side of where his house was. And I was sort of pondering why it was there, because it was blocking the road completely. Now I mentioned this in the previous dream, and it was right towards the end. I mentioned about how modes of transport can represent ministry in dreams. This is looking at my dream book that I've got that breaks down from a biblical point of view dream meanings for certain things in a dream. Okay, and it's like, well, a scooter means this, a bike means this, a car means this, a train means this, all these kind of things. It's always ministry. It's what it says. Like it seems to be the answer to all of those. I've had a different experience as far as what I think the meaning is. I don't deny that it can mean that, of course, but in the context that in which I've had it in my dreams, I don't think it's ever meant that. Actually, no. I'll take that back. No, it has. I think it does mean that actually when I've had a lot of car dreams, but not in the bus coach scenario. That's to me meant a rapture, signifying a rapture, because it's loads of people being taken somewhere at the same time, a bus. So that's what it's represented for me. Obviously, it can still be for ministry. Train again is the same thing. It's taking lots of people. Can be the same thing. But anyway, so I went into the house and then early on asked Dan for a drink. He passed me a bottle, like a standard sort of bottle of water, but it only had like the real dregs, like hardly anything in it. And I just kind of remember thinking, like, who does that? You come as a guest. You come as a guest to someone's house, and he just goes, "Oh yeah, like here's one that I've been drinking. Have that." It's just a tiny little bit of water, and I'm kind of looking at it thinking, "What? Surely you'd get me like a glass of water from the tap or something." So just a small amount of water left, and I complained to him saying, "Well, like, can I at least have a full one?" Yeah, it was pretty much finished anyway, and it was just lying around somewhere, and he just picked up and went, "Well, there you go." I was actually pretty offended by it, to be honest. Given it was his or somebody else's in the house, it was just leftovers, and I just felt like it was a bit, not particularly nice. He ended up being offended that I was offended. I was like, okay, but I thought you were being a bit odd, handing that to me anyway. But anyway, prior to this dream, so I had even something prior to that. So prior to Dan's house, I was at my own house, sitting in a dining room with lots of pieces of paper, so almost like not quite post-its, but let's say post-its, post-it note, that sort of thing. And there you go. I put like post-it notes. Sorry. Which had names of different rooms on them, and the rooms were meant to represent the house that I was in, and also what was written on them was the like kitchen, for example, and it would say the function of that room. So it'd say something like kitchen, preparing food, for example. Okay, but again, presumably, I was presuming that this was the house that I was in. But I noticed room names that didn't actually match up with the actual house, because I said this is my childhood house in this room, such as utility room. Well, we didn't have a utility room. It said second lounge. We certainly didn't have a second lounge. But again, if you go back to the house party, we did have like this big, massive dining room sort of area, and then another lounge as well. So it was almost like it was maybe a bit more like that, but it didn't feel like that in the dream anyway. Oddly, while being at my childhood home, my wife came down the stairs asking me to be ready to go. So I'm pretty sure it was my wife rather than my mum or anything like that. I was forgetting these other rooms that I guess existed, although in reality they didn't exist in reality at all, my childhood home. And so I was a little bit confused actually in the dream, because I'm picking up this thing thinking this is my house, and it's saying second lounge and utility room. I'm like, but we don't have any of those. I don't understand. I was just a bit confused in the actual dream. But I kept on being hurried along. So again, I'm pretty sure this is my wife. But she kept on then saying, "Look, are you ready to go? You need to get ready to go." And I noticed that there was some friends at the house with me who I guess were sort of like waiting, and they were waiting on me so that we could get going where we were going to. And we're preparing to get somewhere, to go somewhere. And I think it was starting to get dark. Okay, so in the timeline, this was clearly before the house party, plus it was also before this little music festival thing as well, and I was fully sober at that point. Okay, so this was before going out. So That's what I mean by it all went in a reverse order as to how I've written it down. Obviously, I mean, that said, I personally have dreams sometimes that do go in a reverse order, and I record them in a reverse order because that's the one they went in. But if you remember back to the first one, I did say that I woke up after the house party. So I've recorded it just back to front, just getting what just happened. I'm quickly writing it down. Not writing it down in my phone. That wouldn't work. Texting it in on my phone. Okay, so it's a quick bit of transparency. So that's the end of all of those dreams. And there's multiple little bits and pieces that come up here. So prior to all of these dreams, transparency statement. So prior, my kind of thoughts as to what could have influenced this dream then, which is what I always put in transparency statements during videos, is just so you know, is there anything that could have really led to that dream and that's why I had it? Well, I do remember us being, we were out somewhere shopping and there was a t-shirt and I noticed that it had zodiac signs on the actual, well, because it's a t-shirt, it's on the front of the t-shirt. And I thought, and I remember pointing it out, you see, and I was like, oh, zodiac, what a load of crap. You know, you see such rubbish on t-shirts. I can't stand some of the t-shirts you get in shops, some of the messages where it says like, be kind, or I don't know, I'm thinking of trying to think of like slogans. Be yourself, you know, and you're amazing and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, so cringy. I can't stand stuff like that. And this was just like one of the typical sort of t-shirts you get with just random designs. Like I remember I was going shopping for some t-shirts recently, and it was a t-shirt and it just had a lemon on it. I'm like, what is that? What is that meant to, like, why would you buy a t-shirt that just has a lemon on it? So random. So I'm going to go into now the meaning aspect of it. Okay, so obviously it's a long dream here that we're covering off. So I'm going to go into my thoughts. So on this particular dream, so it's one big long extended dream. So across all the dreams there was a theme. One of it being a party. Obviously we're going from about to leave the party in that last one, me going to then Dan's house, where I guess it's part of going to the party, then we're at a festival, then we're at an actual house party. So that's the theme as we're going through. Another theme, of course, is time that we're going through. We're going through daylight, through to dusk, through to nighttime. And we're also going through sober, getting drunk, very drunk. Okay, so these are the three sort of themes I would have said that are going through all of these. Okay. And I'm probably going to repeat these, but that's just me sort of thinking just real quick. So we've got, the theme being, being at a party, preparing to go somewhere, and then being at the party. Throughout there seemed to be a sense of drunkenness, clearly people being lustful, being up at lewd, rude, and in what they're saying, with this Tiffany character that's just grabbing hold of this guy and just kissing him without asking for any permission. You've then got this other guy, Chris, that I mentioned, Christopher, who walks into the parents' room and they're trying to be quiet, and he makes an incredibly inappropriate sort of joke where he thinks he's funny, talking to like 10-year-olds about saying that he's going to sleep with them. Don't worry, I'm not going to sleep with you. Just bizarre thing to say to somebody like that. I'd absolutely hate that if somebody said that to my kids. I think I'd probably explode. Okay, there was, so throughout this general disobedience, clearly, as well as anti-God tattoos with the zodiac placed across their chests, which again makes us think of hearts. So, as well, when you put something on your heart, then it, it's kind of like what you believe in, what you strongly sort of believe in, that kind of thing. Yeah, there you go, showing that this is their belief, the belief in mysticism, New Age beliefs, all of this kind of stuff. Piercings, hinting at general sort of brokenness. I mean, when it comes to tattoos and stuff like that, I think I don't have a tattoo. My wife does have tattoos, and my mum, mother-in-law, brother doesn't, but quite a few people I know do have tattoos. I'm not saying that they're broken people at all, but I think there is certainly there's an element of that with piercings, disobedience to parents and stuff like that, or general disobedience. I'm not, part of the system, that kind of thing, outside the system. I would say there's a lot of that with all those kind of things. Obviously not. I'm not saying that is the case at all with everybody, but I think it is the case with quite a few people. But it's a way of expression as well, of course, isn't it? So I was thinking really long and hard on tattoos, designs and stuff like that, because I think this is permanent. You really got to think about what you're putting on your body, because you're marking your body for the rest of your life. In the end, I decided against it. I was going to have an acoustic guitar along my arm that was in like a wave format, like you would see a wave, and it's like a half with it's like a half guitar, and then it was like water, and it was like a reflection of it, but it was in like waves, like you would see of music being played. I thought it looked really cool. The tattoo I saw looked really cool, a lot better than I've just described it. I was really tempted by that. Then I thought, am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to just copy someone's tattoo? But what else we got? So rebellion against sorry, I'm just looking at this. General rebellion against parents and stuff like that as well, with coming into the parents' room like that and being disrespectful. At my mate's house, I was asking for water, which I think, I put here, it could be a picture of the Holy Spirit. I'm looking for the Holy Spirit. I'm looking, I'm wanting a lot more than that. Just the dregs. I want the full bottle. I want, if you think of yourself as the vessel, I want to be full of the Holy Spirit. I don't want just to have a little. I don't know whether that's what it meant of, but there was certainly a lack of water. He didn't get why I had a problem with that at all. And again, there was not any kind of religious context at all to these dreams. It's not like I was a Christian, let's say, in this dream. So I'm not sure if that's what it would potentially mean. The other main theme was obviously daytime at my mate's Dan's house and stuff like that. Moving to the house, the festival outside, sun going down, and growing drunkenness. I put lawlessness. I mean, I didn't see any law breaking necessarily, but unless you consider grabbing hold of somebody and kissing them against the law, I wouldn't have said so. I mean, from a moral point of view, yeah, it probably would be. And the interesting bit about my wife in that last dream I described, where she was saying to me, we need to go. We really need to go. It almost took on a new meaning. Obviously, in the dream, we're just about to go to this. Where are we? Off to this festival sort of thing, or I'm off to go to Dan's house, and then from there to the festival. Not really sure those kind of bits, because they were so local to one another. Those two locations, because we've really got to go, and with some friends in the house and stuff like that. And also, as the party went on, less and less people were there. Interestingly, in what could that suggest? Is it just that as darkness increases, less and less people will be around, maybe? And I'm thinking of it then like let's say the last days and judgments coming and stuff like that, and less people being around as it gets darker and darker, and lawlessness and all of these kind of things increase over time, and I was also thinking about Dan's house with the electric scooter, which was discarded obviously when I got to there, and then it was the bike, and then that was blocking cars. So I mentioned that on the previous stream. It was almost like a progression. So if we are thinking of ministry in that context, well, then the scooter would be, I would have said, represent more being like a child is a scooter, isn't it? And then the bike when you get a little bit older, and then when you get older still, then you get a car, don't you? So it's like a progression of ministry, and I've turned up in a scooter, so it's like I'm at very early stages of childlike sort of faith and early stage ministry, but there's a car is being blocked because I need to move on to the next step, which is the bike. You can't. you can't run before you can walk, sort of thing. You've got to move through those stages. So maybe like it's talking to me about moving through maybe growing faith, growing ministry. Again, if you think of this as like a ministry sort of thing, maybe it's something to do with that again, because I do feel that can represent ministry in certain circumstances. Yeah, I was just, there you go. So it felt like it was showing me my walk as far as my ministry, really, early stages being a scooter, then onto a bike, then etc., etc., etc. So I've just mentioned that about the blocking the car with the bike. The night to day. Yeah, so I put, so as far as obviously the theme of night, day through to night, I think this represents growing darkness, really, so that there's coming in the world. When we say darkness, I mean, all the kind of demonic stuff that you see in pop culture, a lack of positive virtues, let's say, and the fact that it was all getting drunk, and my wife saying we got to go, makes me think of all like the rapture and stuff like that. It's like it's getting dark to the point that at some point the church is going to leave, and then the light goes out. There is no light in the world anymore, and then that's going to mean things are going to get a lot worse. Okay, so I've put a note to myself here, just a quote: Matthew 24, verses 34 to 44. So just quickly find this. What did I say? 34 to 44. 34 to 44. So this is Jesus speaking, and it says, "Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But about that day or hour that no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." So Son of Man being Jesus. "For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." Son of Man, just quickly, is what Daniel, the prophet, refers to Jesus as. Two men will be taken in the field. This is talking about the rapture scenario that it's just talking about. So it's saying that two men will be in the field, one will be taken and then the other left. Two women will be grinding with a hand mill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. There you go. So that's that one. Okay, so that's what it felt like it was talking about there. This growing darkness. That's basically talking about what I think most people would say that's talking about the rapture, the church that gets taken away by Jesus. We meet them in the sky. We're taken to heaven, and again, if you believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, then chaos, absolute chaos on earth is probably what's going to ensue, because not too long after that, then you're going to have, again, if you hold to the 7-year tribulation, then you've got 7 years worth of all sorts of judgments happening. Really steps up a gear at the 3.5 year mark. It gets a lot worse at that point. So I put a little something on here. So the party aspect. So when we had that first part I went through, is, again, I'm thinking of all sorts of ideas of what this could be talking about. So the party itself is like a representation. Maybe it's a representation of Earth, the world. the flesh doing what the flesh wants to do, meaning us, wanting to do what we want to do without restrictions. Again, like the Tiffany character that just grabbed hold of a guy, and all the other stuff. So unrestrained, really, just doing what you want to do. And it almost felt as So I've put here it all like the house party part. Obviously, we moved across to another part of the house and walked in, and it was the family, wasn't it, that were keeping themselves to themselves. They're just watching a bit of TV. They're just keeping themselves quiet. Okay, and it kind of almost made me feel like Christians, like they represented the Christians that say, because they're not drunk. They seem to be pretty normal. And we're all the drunk ones coming in. So it's like we represented the world, they represented potentially the Christians, keeping themselves to themselves, separated from the world. Now there is scripture to do with that, which talks of us being separated. We're a people separated, from the earth. That we no longer have our citizenship on earth, but in heaven now. So I'll try and find the scripture regarding that, because I haven't got that one listed. There's a few that I will just cite for you here. So I wondered whether or could they be representing the tribulation saints, so those where the judgment has already started. But I don't know whether tribulation saints again is a name that we call those that believe in Jesus and put their faith in Jesus while all the judgments are happening. So again, if you believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, then the church has already gone, and these people then, maybe as a result of seeing people just go up into the sky, if it's a seen event, of course, which it may not be, then they're convinced and they believe as well. But it's too late for them. Now they're in this trap of earth. You're trapped on earth now, and now you've just got to get through it. Either you survive or you die. But you die believing in Jesus. You don't ever deny him, because Jesus does say, "If you deny me, and then he'll deny you in front of the Father, because of he's our advocate. He's the one who's paid for our sin." Right. Sorry. Let's move on. So I've quoted here John 15 verses 19, John 17 verses 14 to 16. Romans 12 verse 2, 1 John verse 2 verses 15. General attitude of people, and the one I'm gonna do as my next quote is one that I've used before actually in another video, which is titled "What's That Smell?" Okay, so it's the same scripture here. I'm going to go through. So this one is actually 2 Timothy 3, and I'm going to go through verses 1 to 5. So this is talking about, what is this talking about? It's talking about the generation that will be around, when Jesus will return. This is how you'll know, because this is what society will be like. Okay, so it says, but mark this: there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, having nothing to do with such people. Okay, so that's the 2 Timothy 1, which is talking about the kind of generation that you have. And again, it's mentioned in multiple places. There was other aspects, of course, of the dream, which we're talking about being sober and stuff like that, which I think I've quoted all of these here, which I think this is to do with being sober. Yeah, it is. It's to do with being sober and stuff like that. I've had multiple dreams where I'm drunk, but this one is 1 Peter 5 verses 8. You've got 1 Thessalonians 5 verses 6 to 8. You've got 1 Peter 1 to 13. You've got Titus 2 verses 11 to 12, and you've got 1 Timothy 3 verses 2 and verses 11 as well. Okay, so yeah, so we've covered all of those off. Now I wanted to get something that was revelation I got yesterday. I say revelation, it was very odd that this came up. So this is going to make sense, hopefully. Hopefully. So I told you that this dream happened on the 5th of January 2026. Okay, so, and I told you about that person in the dream called Tiffany, and I said I'll name her because of it's relevant for something I'm going to cover off. Okay, I had this compulsion, as I mentioned, to actually look up the name Tiffany, to see what that meant as a name. No reason, I just randomly had this real strong urge to do it, and I thought I'll leave it, and then it just kept on coming. So I feel like that's very much like when you have the Holy Spirit is kind of almost like prodding you, saying, do this, do this, and you just got to listen. It's not a hearing necessarily of actually hearing a voice, it's just a drawing to do something. Okay, and I have that occasionally, not all the time, but so this one, so I looked up the name Tiffany, and what it actually means is, where's the actual word meaning? Where did I write that? Oh yeah, there we go. So it actually is like a Christian name, really. So it says it. Where does it say the word meaning? I did write this down somewhere. I'm sure I did. Oh yeah. Sorry, I wrote it down somewhere else. Sorry, on a different page. But I go back because it mentions it. So Tiffany. Why the name Tiffany? Name meaning. So it's a feminine Greek origin derived from theophania. So a theophany, I think, is again, I may be wrong, but a theophany is where Christ, Jesus, was, before he was incarnated into a person of Jesus, he was seen in various different parts of the Bible, and that when you see him, it's called a theophany. So it's a pre-Jesus. He was called the Word in the Bible. He's referred to as the Word in quite a few different places, but also, as I said, it's described as a theophany where he's in places in bodily form, and he's seen. Anyway, or it's from theophania or from theophany. Theophanies, I guess, is what that says, and the meaning is manifestation of God, or or a revelation of God. So it says historically this is given to children born on the Epiphany, which is a Christian feast celebrating the appearance of Christ, in that Christ has come, in bodily, in the form, in a human form. So that's what it's celebrating. A Christian festival, yeah. So celebrating the appearance of Christ, traditionally given as a girl's name for those born around this feast, the Epiphany. It's called the Epiphany, which is January the 6th. This dream happened on January the 5th, and it said it's a name given to people who were born around that date. So I've only just found this out yesterday. So literally the next day would be the Epiphany. I've never heard of that, by the way, as a Christian holiday. Never, ever heard of that before. Yeah, completely new news to me. So I've got another bit here that just talks about what the actual festival of Epiphany is. So I don't know what that must. I'm assuming that must be a Catholic, like a Roman Catholic or Eastern sort of Orthodox thing. I've never heard of that as being a Protestant thing at all. But it commemorates the manifestation of Jesus Christ to the world, primarily marking the visit of the Magi. It says in brackets the three wise men. I would say the three wise men. It doesn't say anywhere that there was three wise men. There was three gifts, and so people infer from that there was three wise men. But it doesn't say that anywhere. And I see. Yeah. I'd love to go into more detail about this, but this video would be so long if I did go on to that. I read some stuff actually. It was in the astrology book as it goes, and I actually wrote down before going through this dream, read the astrology book. I did, and it did have stuff about the Magi, so I'm kind of like, but I can't really go through it. It's just too much information. There's too much information. The three wise men were part of the Persian court. Was it Persian or Chaldean? I think it's Persian, but they were the ones who were kind of advisors really to the king and stuff. So they would consult them on doing certain things and decision making based on looking at the stars and stuff like that. But the wise men were not kind of like your horoscope sort of guys that would go, oh look, I don't know, blah 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 is rising, and you got this in this part of the sky, and you think, oh, it must mean, or you're gonna lose your job this week, all this junk, absolute junk. They weren't like that at all. So they actually, through what they did, that's how they knew that the king was coming, that Jesus was going to be born. Okay. But it ends, it says here, so it's a visit of the three wise men, the Magi, to, again, I keep saying three wise men, because of it talks about something else, to the infant Jesus. Apparently it ends the 12 days of Christmas, and is often referred to as the Three Kings Day or Little Christmas, focusing on praising the Saviour. It says here in Eastern traditions, so Eastern Orthodox, that kind of stuff, it also celebrates Jesus' baptism. So I mean, they're two completely different events, like 30 years apart. So so I don't know why they could represent two completely different things there, but that was just an interesting part I thought that I would add in there about the Epiphany, and how I had this person in there called Tiffany, and it was the 5th of January, and the Epiphany is the 6th of January. So, coincidence? No, she's never ever been in a dream before. She's never anybody that I think of. She's not a friend anymore. So there's not a reason for that. Oh, sorry, I've written a note to myself here just to say that I talked about the scooters and all that sort of stuff at the end of the video called Running Late, video, which I only filmed yesterday, 24th of the 2nd, 2026. So I think that's all I wanted to cover off. Obviously, stacks and stacks of scripture in there. So the overall theme is really to do with, I think, growing darkness, which we're seeing, in so many areas. Society is breaking down in so many areas. Godlessness, reducing morality, for sure. And really is a mark of how close we are before Jesus returns. Obviously the Epiphany thing, other than it obviously being a celebration of Jesus' birth, and I don't know what the meaning is beyond that, but just interesting, very, very interesting. That's something I've never heard of before. But I'd love to get into the Magi bit, but it would just take me so much more time, another 15 minutes to half an hour. So I've got to kind of cut it there. So maybe I'll do something about it another time, and it will slot into another video. But hopefully you found that interesting. If you've got any thoughts on the dreams, obviously do put them in the comments. I will generally always comment back, and maybe you have some light on it. Share some light on it that I just don't know of. Please do look out for the sinner's prayer. You will see that on multiple different videos. Say that prayer out loud, and that will open the door for God to start working in your life, start changing your life to a massive positive. Anything you're struggling with, you will start to see those things dropping off. I would suggest that's certainly what I experienced, for sure. Miraculous changes immediately. Didn't need to try, it just happened. All alcohol, to be honest, was one of them. I had a real aversion to alcohol. I didn't want to drink alcohol at all, and had a real conviction of that. And it was like, I do have the occasional drink now, but it's very much under control now. And I have very much a kind of feeling of just the one, that's it. Because I was just getting drunk during the day just for fun. No reason at all. No celebration. No Friday night necessarily. Saturday night. It was just, can't just have a drink. I'm doing a bit of cooking. Let's sink a few whiskies. So, and it's quite bad really, because, I was drunk around my kids and stuff like that occasionally. I was never a danger to them, so please don't get that. I was never a danger. They were like, oh, you're really fun when you're drunk. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't have the same inhibitions, do I? I'm fun when I don't have a drink though, as well. But that's it. I'll leave it there. Okay, so that was a bit of a long one, but yeah, do check out the other dreams. So what's that smell is a really interesting one, and where that takes on this sort of 2 Timothy aspect as well. And if there's any other kind of dreams I think it might link up with, I'll write it down. But always check the comments, always check the description, which will list all the scriptures. It will list any kind of connections. The comments are good for if I've noticed I've messed up in some way, I will then actually put in, oh, by the way, I said this, I really didn't mean that, sorry, at the 23-minute mark I mentioned this, and there'll be stuff like that on there. Okay, so correct me if I'm completely wrong. Obviously, if you've got your own views on the tribulation and the rapture and stuff like that, sure, if you want to mention your thoughts, fine, but it's nothing that divides the church. We all see different things that say in the scripture, but mine is that I think personally that the seeing Noah and he fully escapes the judgment is taken above, in that the waters rise and the ark rises, represents going to heaven and stuff like that, and being safe, locked by God in safety in the ark as a representation of heaven. I think all of that speaks to that, and obviously Sodom and Gomorrah, when it's the righteous are taken out, and where do they go? They go to high ground for safety. Again, like an imagery of heaven, and then they see the judgment happen. To a certain, well, I say see the judgment happen. They know it's happening. They're running, and they've got their back to it. But yeah, they know it's coming. So I think that is all the righteous being taken out before the judgment comes. Personally, I think pre-tribulation rapture, and a lot of other stuff to do with when you see people in throughout Revelation, you see believers in heaven, I believe, anyway, while a lot of this stuff is going on. Right, anyway, that's it for now. Okay, so hope you found it interesting, and I will get another video as soon as I get some time. All right, see you soon.